Okay, so back into our files, and essentially what we were looking at before, the mistake was, if I just rename that to our button. So yeah, we were just had one file that rendered a button, yeah, and we were just trying to test that, and we were getting some false positives. And essentially we just had the black bracket in the wrong place, right? It's just one of those little silly mistakes again. I've got my voice echoing around the room, which is weird, really weird. If someone could mute, that would be great. Cool, so yeah, essentially we just had the bracket in the wrong place, so rather than closing the expect before the to equals, I think we had the whole thing inside of the expectation, right, which doesn't make sense. We expect something to equal something else. So just testing this one. At the moment we're just rendering one single button with our component, and I've just put in here, once we've found a button, we expect there to be 3 of them on the page as a test, right? So obviously that fails because our component is not rendering one button, but sorry, it's not rendering 3 buttons but 1. So how would we now make that test pass? So if we look down in our button.test.js file, our output is, we expect the value to equal 3, and we have received none because the import is incorrect. Now we should have received 1. So as soon as you make some changes in your file, the test reruns. So now we expected 3 buttons to be rendered by our component, but we instead received 1. So how could we fix that? We shouldn't amend the test, right? Let's assume the test is correct and we actually do want to produce 3 buttons. So we could go back into the button.js file, and what happens if I return 3 buttons? Is that valid? Yeah. So we can't have adjacent elements, can we, in our JSX? Let's see what the test says, because I'm quite interested to see whether the test. No. So the test gets the syntax error, right? We can see the output. Adjacent JSX elements must be wrapped in an enclosing tag. So one suggestion we had was a div. Another suggestion? Or another alternative? By the way, let's check whether our test passed. Yeah, so now our button.test.js passed. The failed there is from the other test file, yeah, so that we've got another test file. Yeah, so if you run the runner once, it's just constantly monitoring, and to get out of it, you exit the same way as you would a server. So Control C, I've now stopped the test runner, and I could run again, and I guess I will run just the button.test file rather than the whole suite of tests, just so we're not getting confused.
Did you say Control C stops the server as well?
Control C is the command to stop the server, yeah. That's on Mac or on Windows. It's always Control C.
I was struggling with that the other day. Cool.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so that's passing now because we've rendered 3 buttons inside of a div, and the enclosing tag. Instead of the div, we could have had what? Fragment. So I could type the long way react.fragment. Oh, yeah. And that would also work. There's a shorthand version of that now, which is just get rid of everything and have this empty tag. So the benefit of React fragments is you don't render anything any extra element to the DOM. So I would literally only render 3 buttons there to the DOM. Whereas if I had a div, of course, each time this component gets run, I'm going to render a div with 3 buttons inside. So it's a bit neater, yeah? There's one other option as well. We spoke the other day about the HTML being able to pass arrays. So it's happy if you send it an array. So I can actually put these 3 buttons inside of an array as well. Why is it still not happy?
We have to put comma.
Yeah. Arrays, separate elements, right? So we have 3 separate buttons. And it still passes. It says something, but each chart should have a unique key prop. Yeah, alright, because it's a list it wants to put a key in as well, but that's more of a warning than an error. Okay, yeah, so nice. How about if, hold on, I'm going to go back to the fragment because it's my preferred way of displaying it. How about if we wanted the text of the first button to say, press me? How would we, sorry, I've done it the wrong way around, right? Test-driven development, what do I do first? Write the test. Let's write the test first. How would I, let's write a different test. We've got 3 buttons, and now we want first button. I shouldn't write first like that, should I? First button. Oh my god. To say, what does it say? Press me. Press me, and let's have an exclamation mark as well, just to be fussy. How am I going to test that button? Or the text inside of that button?
Can you do like dot text dot to dot equal press me?
Yes, absolutely. So we expect button, and I'm talking about the first button. So how am I going to do this? Is it at? Ooh. This is a problem with me in testing because there's so many things that I never remember, so many methods that I never remember. So you want to try and just index it like that. That might work. So if we expect the first button dot text to equal, and then give it a name of press me. Let's see whether that is accepting it as a test. It's obviously failing, which is good. So 1 passed, so my first one still passed, there's 3 buttons still, but my other one failed. And app.find cannot read property text of undefined, so I don't think it's liking the 0 index. And method text is meant to be run on 1 node. Yeah, 3 found instead. Just because I can't remember how I select the first one, I am going to just put 1 button here, which is a right cheat, but never mind. Okay, so now inside of our HTML elements exists block, we've got 2 tests. The first one, does the button exist, has passed. The second one, first button to say press me, or button to say press me, we could say, is failing, which makes sense. So we expected to have that value, press me, however, instead, we just got an empty string because the button has nothing inside. So to fix that, if we put the required text, would that work? Oh, well, you know, right, because the test runner just showed you. It hasn't worked. Why is that incorrect? before I reveal the answer. Why is that incorrect? I just copied and pasted it. Surely that's correct, no?
Does it not need the quotation marks?
You're saying I should get rid of the quotation marks. Yeah, you're correct, right? Because whatever comes between a HTML tag is already text. So if we put quotation marks, well, we can see on the test, right? That's actually going to get outputted to the screen, right? So we actually received, look, they've got the escape characters there. So the quote symbol is included and outputted to our web page. So I need to get rid of those, and it should then be correct. Our test should pass. Nice. Anything else we want to do with the buttons, or is that good enough for a basic one? What I wanted to do next was to just show you how to test a basic JavaScript function, so that if you didn't want to test in DevTools, you can now run it in your VS Code and use the test runner to test your function output. Yeah? Any questions before we move on? Yep.
Did you say this is to change all the text?
Yeah, I can do that now if you wish. Whatever makes most sense to you. They're both commonly used. So if you prefer test to realize that that is a single test, use that. Anything else, guys? Nope. All right. So I have got this question from the platform, and we're looking at ternaries part 1, because that was part of the board challenge, so I thought we'd cross over at least a little bit in that way. And I've called my test ternary1.test, and to test the function I'm going to need to import it from its relative file, and I've just given it a name of am I old. I'm going to stop the test runner. So I've given it a name of am I old because that was the name of the question on the platform. So that, again, the second argument of my test after the description is a function. We have our expectation, and we can invoke the function, pass some inputs into it. So I think the first test on the platform was 34, the age 34. I can put that as my input, just as I would normally. And yeah, don't do it inside. We expect that to be yes or no answers, right? So am I old? That's probably going to be a no. No as a string. Yeah, so that's the easiest way to write a test for a simple function. Now imagining that we didn't have that code, we can run the test. So you can see down here I've got ternary1 and ternary1.test.js. So I can run my test file, the individual one, by running what command? npm run test. Yeah, make sure it's got the run in it. And then the name of the file I want to run is ternary1.js. Like that. Cool. Let's see what happened. Something wrong, I think. No tests found. Did I spell it wrong? I didn't put test on it, did I? ternary1.test.js would make more sense. Okay, one failed test. Comparing two different types of values. Expected string, but received undefined. Yeah, of course, my function is undefined, or returning undefined, because we have nothing inside of it. So let's fix that now. So we want to take our age and return either yes or no based on them being over 100 or not, let's say. Yeah? So if you're over 100, you're old. How could I solve that function? Start you off. You can do me the rest. Age? Yep. Thank you. Let's use the ternary operator. Okay. Age less than 100. Okay. So if age is less than 100, question mark. Yeah. So am I old is the question. So if you're less than 100, the answer would be
No. Am I old? Yeah. Oh, less than 100.
okay. No. Finishing it off, when would we be old? So I do colon, yeah, and yes. And now I can see the test has passed. However, we might want to revise our test and say something like return old if.
Can we check that? Of course, we can check if this string or integer.
Yeah, of course, you could do that as well. Yeah. Return old if. What? I'm trying to say less than 100? No, we've already done that. So I want to do the edge case that was different. So we had, if it's less than 100, so if it was 100, then it's going to say yes, right? So let's say return old if over 100. Or return no if 100, right? So let's say we revised our formula a little bit and we put in 100. So we're expecting it to be no if our input is 100, but actually we received yes. So we've now got a failure in test again. We repeat the cycle, go back to our code, revise it. How would I revise it to make it work for this test case? Yeah, exactly. Less than or equal to 100, right? Yeah, so maybe our original test wasn't specific enough. We weren't quite sure where the division of am I old or not lay, so therefore we could revise our function later on by adding another test. Of course, we could put those in a describe block now if we want, because there's more than one of them. Yeah, so we can just chuck all that in there. Make sure you give it a description of test number inputs or something like that. And need a comma. And we should still test suite failed to run. Spelt describe wrong, yeah. That would do it, yeah. Nice, and then it still works. Cool. Yeah, so if you were writing tests for the platform and they were just JavaScript tests, you could do it like this. However, on the platform it often just uses the triple equals sign, right? So the triple equals will work sometimes, but it doesn't for other cases. However, we've set up the platform so that it will always work. What I'm trying to say is imagine we had a different function. And let's say our function just returned an empty object for now. always. So it's not a useful function, but it will do for the demo. So we expect when we invoke is same object, for it to be, actually let's use, so you've got to be and you've got to equal. I'm going to stop the test so I don't give away the answer. So one of these tests is going to use to be and one of them is going to use to equal. So they can both essentially be equality of objects tests. Alright. So all this file is doing is it's getting the isSameObject file from this function. Sorry, getting the same isSameObjects function from this file. That always returns an empty object. We just want to test that when we invoke that function on this line, that it is definitely equal to an empty object. Do you think both of those will pass?
The first one doesn't.
The first one doesn't pass. Why was
First one will pass. The second one.
Because we can't compare the objects. I follow this.
if in the console, JavaScript console, I run a bit of JavaScript code and I try and compare one object to another, is it going to be true or false? False. Yeah, because these are two created objects. JavaScript has created one object in memory and then it has created another object in memory. They're sitting at separate memory locations.
Now I get this.
When you do the triple equals, it compares things by their memory location in the case of complex objects, yeah? So we have to do some extra tests to test whether the contents of an object are equal or not.
But always object can be very complicated.
Yeah, testing for equality of objects can be a little bit complicated. So built into the Jasmine or the Jest test syntax are two different ways of comparing whether things are equal or not. One of them works for objects and complex data types. The other is just good for like numbers and strings, what we call primitive data types. Yeah, so one of them only works with primitive data types and the other will work with both primitive and complex data types. Which one is it? If we run the file, we'll see that one of them fails and one of them passed. The one that failed was the two quality of one object to equal. The one that failed was the to be, yeah? Because look, the message, for deep equality, only use to equal. So deep equality means, you know, these objects are complex, we need to dive a bit deeper into them. Yeah, think of that like that for now. So unless you've got millions and millions of tests, you probably just want to use to equal. Yeah, that keeps it simple, then you're not going to confuse yourself. Alright. So hopefully there you've at least got a way to test the basic JavaScript functions on the platform. However, what about if you want to test your answers to the React questions, which is something you can't easily do in DevTools? So how about now we use the built-in jest syntax to, sorry, the built-in test runner to test some of those. So I'm just going to use a easy question for now. Conditional, sort of conditional day, right? So let's go for that one. Okay. So luckily, we've got our test written for us. Yeah. So this is all the stuff on the left-hand side of the platform is in React. It's just a jest test. If it uses things like shallow, we're also importing enzyme. So if I copy that, oh, I can't copy it now. It's annoying, isn't it? I think I can copy it a different way. Exercise list that I do. That one, right? Conditional rendering. So now I think I can copy it. Lovely. And I should now have set it up to work with enzyme. So, over lunch I made sure I installed the adapter and got enzyme working. Yeah. Now let's create a new file, and we can say React conditional rendering .test.js. So that's our test. What things did we need to import? We needed to import again React. You tell me, guys, what else I need to import to make sure we can test our React components. Jest is already installed because we've got a React project, so that's all configured behind the scenes. We don't need to worry about that one. Enzyme, yep. Import, is it just enzyme from enzyme? And no, it's certain components from enzyme. We weren't importing the whole of enzyme. So we were importing configure. We were importing shallow. I don't think we need mount in this case, but let's see.
What does that do to the mount?
Similar to shallow, right? It mounts a component, so we've got a component to work with. Shallow is one level deep. I think mount possibly is a bit deeper than that, so we could mount multiple components. What else do we have? Definitely need to configure our adapter at some point, so we probably need to import our adapter, I imagine, from, this is a long one, so I'm going to cheat and have a look. From the enzyme adapter. Hey? Oh, thank you, yeah. Import adapter from. Is that it? And then just the component we need. So import React Q from React Q.
So what it is?
Question, React question. We're going to test a question, right? Sorry, it wasn't clear. Cool. Let's just copy and paste that. So this is going to just be a template, right? Every React thing you're going to just set up like this. Oh no, I've got the test on already. Yep, so we've got our test. I'm going to rename that to React Queue. It's far too long. I am going to copy and paste it. And we'll make sure that one is our React Queue and one is our React Queue question. So our test. Test. Okay. Alright. So you're always going to have this pair of files, one that contains the function or the component and one that contains the test, and just let them sit next to each other. Alright. So for the actual question itself, we don't need a test. We're going to need a function of some sort. And we need to make that available to the rest of our project so that we can test it. Let's tidy up a little bit, I think. Okay, I'm going to leave it like that for now. I'm going to check we've got a failing test and that our test is working. Just the same thing again, npm run test. As we've got a few tests, I'm just going to make sure I run the specific one I need, which is react queue.test.js. Failed, which is good. What's it complaining about though? Cannot find module react queue. I must have done the import wrong. Cannot find module react queue from react queue.test.js. Oh yeah. Why is that wrong? Line 4.
Dot slash.
Yeah, I missed the dot slash, didn't I? Silly, because we're importing all these others, which are packages and modules, whereas this is a file in our own project. So it needs the dot slash. Still not like it? Yes, thank you. Okay. Reference error welcome is not defined. So that needs to be welcome. Then cannot read property equal of undefined. Maybe this is not just yes. Okay, nice. So I think Ricardo might have been using a slightly different test syntax. So you saw his was written as 2 dot equal, whereas in Jest it's 2 equal camel case. subtle, but made a big difference. Alright, so we need to try and get this test to pass. So we need to go and write our welcome component. So I will rename that to welcome. Should we look at the original question just to familiarise ourselves again? If last name is provided, display welcome Mr. Last Name. If not, display welcome first name. Yeah. So as that's in the question, I think it's fair enough to take that. Yeah, so that could have been our bit of pseudocode. Right. So if last name is given, display welcome Mr. Last Name. If not, display welcome first name. How can I write a component that does that?
Return.
Always a good place to start, right? If you don't know, let's return something. Yeah, return. Boom.
And some parameter.
And some parameters. Sorry, a parameter? What do you mean? Yeah, up there, yeah. What do you want to put in? Name? Yeah, so let's say we've got some sort of input.
Or person.
Person now, okay, because he's got other things, yeah. Or he or she, sorry.
So now we can write the conditions.
Okay, so what conditions should we have? Yeah. So if there is a person dot last name, then we want to do one thing. Otherwise, we want to do another thing. Yeah. So if there is a person dot last name, let's say it was this one, right? Welcome Mr. Last Name. So we use backticks. Welcome Mr. How do I make last name correctly display? So I don't want to say last name, I want to say welcome Mr. Rossi. Right, that was the output test case. Dollar sign, awesome. Curly braces to make it a variable or a bit of executable code. Otherwise, we just display welcome first name. So otherwise, we display welcome. Yeah. All right.
Person dot.
Much better. Oh, okay, it passed straight away. Yeah, I thought we might have to do something different. I hadn't checked the question enough, but yes, we've now written the React component to pass that test. And the beauty of it doing it this way is if you've already got a React project up and running, we could also import it into here. So import, is it welcome? Forgotten again, sorry. Yeah, import welcome from React Queue, right? Import welcome from React Queue. Make sure I've got the dot / this time. And what we can do inside of our app is actually render it. So when you're creating all these components on the platform and you don't know what they look like, you know, with these option boxes and selects, what does that actually look like on the page? Well, if you write the test this way and create the component, then you can just render it to the page and see what it looks like as well as testing it. Based on the CSS here, this might display or it might not. And we need to pass in some data though, don't we? We need to pass in a person, yeah, an object. So how could we do that?
You can put in the if a person,
Hmm.
the objects in the directory, like I put as a template test.
Yeah, or we could probably use props, right?
First name and last name, object is
We could also object destructure it. Let's come to that in just a second. Let's get it displayed first. So if we actually had a component like that, hopefully we're going to get some text displayed on the screen welcoming us at the top. Need to run my application, of course. I'll open a new window for that. New terminal. Think I might be in the wrong folder. So if I cd into movies to movie component, hope it's singular, we'll find out. Yeah. Run my server. So we hopefully now have a welcome message above all of our movies. Or we don't, because we can't resolve React Q. It's lowercase again, isn't it? Yeah, I did the same mistake. Now React is defined but never used in React Q. Fair enough, but I'll leave it there just in case we're going to pad it out. Now, it's very, very small, but can you see we do have welcome Mr. Rossi at the top. So we can test what our React components are doing, and this is going to be especially useful, I think, when you start getting onto the intermediate React, which I've lost again. So if we're in the challenges, not challenges, training, React, the shortcut, just hard type intermediate in there. And let's say, yeah, whatever, we had some inputs. Now you've got the test to test whether you can create this component, and when you start writing this code, what does it actually look like? Yeah, so we're going to have some input text boxes, and you'll see what they look like rendered on the page. The lists one will be especially useful actually. You'll be able to see all these lists on the page. You'll see some reset buttons with some click events. You know, you actually be able to play around with these components rather than just seeing raw code and not knowing what it does. If you write the test for the React component, create it yourselves, then you can render it as you would any other React component. Yeah, so then you've got something visual on the screen to relate to all of these test syntax. So yeah, just a couple of files again, as it was before. I'll send you this if you like as a template, right, as a boilerplate, so that you don't have to remember all these little things. And that will enable you to test your React components in VS Code. That for me is a good place to stop, but we can do other things if you want.
You create a new file and you test it.
Well, if it's a separate component, then it should probably have its own test file, yeah, because they're unit tests, right? You're testing one unit at a time, one little building block at a time.
It would
It builds up your development folder, but you don't commit all these things. You don't deploy them. Yeah, you build your website from the files that you want, but it will ignore any test files when you build it.
So would you put all of your test files into kind of one main test folder?
Some people do that, but other people prefer to have them right next to each other because you'll be bouncing backwards and forwards between them very quickly. And then if you've got a long list of test files, it could be quite hard to find the one that you want. Well, not hard, but you know, it just delays you and frustrates you a little bit. So you're going to have a project structure anyway, right? You're going to have your components that are related to a certain function. So that would be your way of finding the correct test and the correct component, and then just have them next to each other. I think is the better way.
So if you have a file which has the React component and say like it's personalized CSS file and a test folder, and then when you come to, you said like you would only commit or like push certain files.
So when you deploy, you're only going to end up deploying your CSS and your JavaScript.
Does that make it? Is it difficult to then? Would you have to like go through them all and like?
No, it's all automated.
There's other ways of doing it.
Yeah.
No,
Essentially, yeah. You know, like you use your get ignore file and you're not committing all your node modules. It's on the screen, yeah. So you've got a get ignore file, and inside of that get ignore file is this / node modules, which means every time you commit and push, all of this 200 megabytes of React and Enzyme and all stuff like that doesn't get pushed to your Git folder. These are things that are just for local development.
But if you're working on a project with other people, then they want to be able to run the test as well. And then I guess would you commit it?
Yeah, so you can still commit. Yeah, so commit and deploy is different, right? So you're still going to commit your test files, but you don't want to deploy them so that they're there taking up space on your website and no one interacts with them.
Okay,
Yeah. And as Nick said, it's just as simple as putting a configuration file and listing the extension of .test.js, and none of that will get deployed. Yeah. Not yet. No, but it will come soon.
At what point do you expect to start using unit tests in that project? So it's not the case in the second week. So week 4, week 6 of the project.
As soon as possible. As soon as possible. The reason we didn't do it day one is because they're not the easiest things to understand and to write if you're not familiar with JavaScript. So if you went into a company and you started writing new code, you would write the tests straight away. It's always easier to write the tests for a new project than it is to rewrite tests for an existing product that don't have any tests yet, right? Because the tests will force you to write your components in a certain way that makes them very testable. So if someone else has written components or JavaScript functions and they haven't used standard ways of writing them or standard design patterns, then it could be a bit harder to test them, yeah. But writing the test first forces you almost to follow a standard, yeah.
So if you weren't using React, and you were just using like a basic like vanilla JavaScript, CSS, HTML, like at what point would you start using testing? I know you said like from the beginning, but you wouldn't use it if you just did like would you use it on HTML and CSS, or is it only when you start using JavaScript do you start needing to use tests?
You can do, and there will just be different types of testing for testing how things look.
So is testing also for CSS?
There are other testing frameworks, to test how things look. So Ricardo again is using one of them, right? You get the little snapshot testing of how things should look.
Oh, right,
for the HTML and CSS.
Yeah, and like the froggy.
And the Froggy game, yeah, similar to Flexbox Froggy, whatever it's called, something like that. But that would be a different framework. That wouldn't be using Jest necessarily. So there's lots and lots of testing frameworks out there. Some people's job is just testing, right? That's their job. But we just wanted to cover unit testing first because they're your fundamental building blocks. So if you're interested in more testing, Ricardo can talk about other methods that he's used in business later on, hopefully. Yeah? we can request, put it on the board. You know, want more on design testing or mock-up testing or.
So on that table, yeah, I can leave it the note.
Yeah, you know when you do the retro, just leave a post-it on that far board,
Okay.
and that is stuff that we can action then. Yeah. Cool. The only other thing you mentioned was object destructuring, right? So you could have quickly done a bit of object destructuring in there. Rather than using props, do the curly braces, last name, comma, first name, to destructure the object into its two keys, and then we don't need to put props each time. So that would also now still work. And where's my test? That was for the different one. My test still passes. However, if I had props, I'm not sure it might even still pass. No, it doesn't. Props is not defined. Yeah? So that would be a way to object destructure it as well. Alright. Anything else? No? Awesome. Anything online, guys? Okay. Thanks very much then.